It was believed that the 1893 Chicago World Fair gave birth to the Great American Carnival. They were full of interesting things that you could never imagine, and America was ready for entertainment. For a small fee, you could see wild animals, high-wire walkers, fire jugglers, acrobats, and strange people with their bodies covered in tattoos. There would be attention-getting acts such as sword-swallowing and fire-eating. You could also gawk at people with rare and sometimes debilitating conditions. At the time, they were called freaks. It's where we get the term freak show. P.T. Barnum was one of the most famous showmen of the freak show industry, but it was common for some of his acts to be schemes and not entirely true. He advertised aggressively and made up stories to accompany the acts. He showcased things like the oldest woman in the world, who claimed to be 116 years old, and the bearded lady, General Tom Thumb, and the human skeleton. Curiosity drew in large audiences, and it'd be years before people would begin to view profiting from others' misfortune as wrong, and the rise of disability laws would cause a sharp decline in these kinds of acts. But for a while, the traveling carnival was a way for those with physical anomalies to make a living in a world where they would otherwise be marginalized, destitute, and without work. They, in essence, had to exploit their own deformities to make a living. And Grady Stiles was one such person.
I'm Darlene.
And I'm Melody.
This is Hard Times and True Crimes.
Well, hello this morning, Darlene.
Hello to you.
We want to give a shout out to Brewskis for sponsoring this episode for us with the coffees.
Yes, we got 2 dirty chai lattes, and they were incredible.
I really like the dirty chai. I'm not that great at ordering these special coffee type things, but I went on your suggestion and I loved it.
Yes, so it's a chai latte with a shot of espresso. And I think I got a double shot of espresso because I needed it. But yeah, that's one of my favorite drinks. And Brewski's makes it so well. And there's just a lot of extra like spice in it. And I love it.
So thank you, Brewski's, for sponsoring our episode today.
Yes. So what did you do this past week?
Oh, well, I did have some feedback on our last episode, The Bitter Blood. My mom called me after listening to share with me. She reminded me of this man that she dated at one time once I was an adult. And she asked if I remembered him. And I said, oh, yeah, I remember him. And she said, well, he was related to the Sharp family.
Oh, my gosh.
When she told me that, we kind of had a great little chit-chat on the phone about it, just because some of his mannerisms,
right.
We were kind of comparing like, oh, yeah, that kind of fits. And we were trying to figure out, was Susie Sharp, the judge, his aunt or his cousin? And we, based on age, we figured she must have been his aunt as well. So I think he was probably Susie Newsom's cousin.
First cousin, right?
And, yes.
And Fritz.
And probably Fritz's.
So they were all first cousins.
To the best of what we could figure. My mom and I were on the phone trying to figure that out.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is an incredible little connection there.
Yeah, really. Wow. So that was interesting. What about you?
Well, this past week, my mom, my brother, and my sister and I, we all went to Beach Mountain in North Carolina. Oh my gosh. That's my new favorite place.
Oh, wow.
It was, first of all, the weather was incredible. There was no air conditioning in the cabin. You open the windows and it is cool. I mean, It's not just okay. Like, it's actually really cool. We saw bears. Of course, they were there. One of them got in my brother's back of his truck. It was neat. We went to Mystery Hill, which was so much fun. If you have not been to Mystery Hill and you're over that way, you've got to check that out. They have axe throwing and bull riding. It's just this like gravitational phenomenon there. And It was awesome.
And Mystery Hill, that is in Blowing Rock, North Carolina?
It is.
Is it Blowing Rock?
Yes. And then, of course, we did like the old time photographs.
I saw your pictures and they looked great because I've gone to Mystery Hill, but it was so many years ago. And so now it looks like they have a ton more things. When I went, they didn't have the axe throwing.
Yeah.
And the mechanical bull.
Yes.
And so I was like, I've got to go back there. That looks like so much fun.
It was a ton of fun. So we each had a day to where we got to pick like what we did. And so on my mom's day, she wanted to take us to see the movie, and I could not think of the name of it, but it was about For King and Country, about Rebecca St. James' life story.
Oh, yeah. It's not Unsung Hero.
Yes, Unsung Hero.
Okay.
It was so good. And I think
Candace Cameron Bure.
Yes, she directed it. That was so good. We cried and cried.
I've been wanting to see that.
It's definitely worth going to see. It was awesome. And then on the last day, so the whole time we were there, we were wanting to see that abandoned theme park.
Yes.
The Land of Oz.
Oh, yes.
We asked everybody there, and everybody would just tell us, you can only get there by skylift. You can only get there by skylift, which we knew that. We knew it was like on top of the mountain somewhere, but we didn't know where. On the last day, we found a local, and we found out it was right up the road from us, and we couldn't trespass, but we did take some pictures of the outside. And it was so cool, and I cannot believe that there's a theme park on top of that mountain.
I used to go there as a kid.
Really?
Yes.
Oh my
I went there
goodness.
as a child, and I remember, I mean, I don't have a great detailed memory of it, but I was about 3 or 4 years old, and I can remember going there.
Wow. So if you have not been to Beach Mountain, you should definitely check it out.
All up there, Beach Mountain, Blowing Rock, Boone, lots of stuff to do in that area. It's beautiful.
Do you have anything else?
Nope. I'm ready to jump in.
All right.
This tale today is a little shorter than the last couple that we've done, but it's odd and it's intriguing. So I'm just going to go ahead and start telling you about it.
All right.
Grady Franklin Stiles Sr. was born in Catawba County, North Carolina.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, in 1912. And he was born with a rare condition called Ectrodactyly. Mm-hmm. This condition causes fusions or like a cleft in the fingers, and it gives them the appearance of pinchers. And this condition had been in his family for generations, dating back to at least 1840.
Isn't that something?
Yeah. And it had been passed down several generations there. Well, Grady met and married a woman named Edna, and they had children. Mm-hmm. And because of this being passed down, Grady did pass it down to his children. In those days, it would have been hard for somebody with a disability to find work that could provide for a wife and 3 children.
Right.
Grady did manage to find a way to make his disability and that of his family into a lucrative business. He joined the carnival as a sideshow, allowing people to view his family with their claw-like hands for a fee. And they called themselves the Lobster family. They were one of the most popular carnival acts of the early 20th century.
Wow.
So their son, Grady Stiles Jr., was born in 1937, and like his siblings and his father before him, he was born with that rare condition, ectrodactyly. And at the age of 7, Grady Jr. became a part of the family show as well. And he was especially interesting to look at because of his feet. They also had the same condition as his hands. So he was actually known as Lobster Boy.
Oh, okay.
And he would heave himself up on a cushioned platform, and he would welcome attendees with this speech. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am the Lobster Boy. This condition is not caused by drugs or diseases. It runs in the family.
Wow.
So you can just imagine how that would sound. And so since his feet were deformed too, he couldn't walk, and he was confined to a wheelchair his whole life. Due to that, he actually developed some incredible upper body strength.
Okay.
Because he was used to having to use those arms for everything.
Yeah.
And he actually learned to pull himself across the floor, and he eventually learned how to write. And
wow.
He could write his name and could use firearms.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, we'll come back to that. So he toured with his family during carnival season. And then during the off season, like most of the carnival employees did, they would retire to a place called Gibsonton, Florida, locally known as Showtown, USA.
Okay.
I guess you've probably heard of that.
Yes, I have heard of it.
Is that close to where your family grew up?
Not really. But I've heard of it, but I've never been there.
Okay. So apparently a lot of the carnival workers would winter there.
Mm-hmm.
So when Grady was a young man, he fell in love with a fellow carnival performer named Mary Teresa Herzog. And she had actually run away from home to join the circus. She was 19, but when I say she ran away, she was literally running away to get away from abuse and incest.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Now, she did not have any deformities of her own, so she wasn't actually part of any of the circus acts. Mm-hmm. She just performed odd jobs there, whatever they needed help with.
Okay.
And so she met Grady, and they became friends. And his condition didn't bother her at all, and she fell in love with him.
Wow.
So they finally married in 1958, and they were kind of young.
Yeah.
But early in the marriage, Grady started drinking heavily. He was already prone to anger, and the alcohol just fueled that. And as we know, it's common, their spats like that will often turn into violent altercations, and they did. Many times, Mary would end up beat up.
Oh.
But she did continue in the marriage, and she went on to have two children with Grady. Their daughter, Donna, who did not have the condition known as ectrodactyly, and then their other daughter, Kathy, who did. Kathy was now the 5th generation of that family with the condition. So, of course, she joined the family performance as well. Now, she would later claim that she was forced to perform by her father. They were making anywhere between $50,000 and $80,000 per season.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean,
so they were not hurting for money, because that's a lot of money back then.
It's a lot of money. It was equal to about $350,000 or more today.
Wow. Okay.
So no way was he going to let Kathy out of that family gig.
No.
Like, that's just more money making for him, right?
Sure.
And so when I say it was lucrative business, obviously it was demeaning.
Of course.
You're letting people stare at you and gawk at your deformities for money. But at the same time, you probably don't have a lot of other ways to do that.
Especially back then.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a great moneymaker. And so he basically ended up exploiting his own family and his own disability to provide for them.
Yeah.
And
I get it. I mean,
yeah.
You're kind of put between a rock and a hard place.
Sure. I mean, I'm not going to judge him for that. Mm-hmm. And again, I mean, he wouldn't even have been successful if he didn't have lots of people who were willing to pay to come and see.
Exactly. That's right.
Yeah.
And two, I think back in those days, a lot of, what year was this? Like in this?
Well,
50s?
Yes. Now, his father had been doing this act probably since the 40s.
Right.
Maybe even the late 30s.
And I think he was probably raised in a generation where kids, they worked and they helped.
Absolutely, yeah. I feel like maybe his alcoholism may have stemmed from some of that, just that whole thing.
Yeah.
Grady's temper, still a problem, and now he's got these little girls that he has, and now he's taking it out on them as well as his wife. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is definitely an abusive home, and some people may be wondering, like, how in the world is he able to commit such acts of violence? Couldn't they just get away from him because he can't walk?
Right.
But remember his upper body strength. Mm-hmm. He had learned, like, he could throw himself out of his wheelchair and do a lot of damage during his outburst. He would kick Mary to the floor, headbutt her in the face.
Oh, my gosh.
And he was even able to choke her with his claws.
Wow.
So it was some pretty rough stuff. I'm sure it was unbearable at times. Perhaps the years of living his life, allowing people to stare at him and his family, took more of an emotional toll on his psyche than he realized.
Yeah.
And he just had a lot of pent-up anger, and then that drinking was maybe being used to drown his sorrows, but instead it's really fueling that rage.
Right.
His wife, Mary, said once that the whiskey transformed her husband from a caring family man into a battering brute.
Mm-hmm. So he wasn't always like that when he wasn't drinking, I'm guessing.
She made it sound like
not
always,
okay.
Especially not in those earlier years.
Okay.
And some people said, he's not really a freak. He's a pure monster.
Wow.
So then came the day that Grady, instead of Mary leaving because of the abuse, Grady threw Mary and the girls out of the house. And Mary found herself in the arms of another circus performer. His name was Harry Glenn Newman, also known as the Midget Man.
Okay.
because at that time he was the world's smallest man.
Wow.
Now, I know the word midget is not politically correct term today, but it was used then.
Sure.
And
it's not what we're calling them.
I'm not trying to be insensitive. Yeah. I'm just telling you what the name of the act was.
Yes.
So Mary and Harry had a son together that they named Harry Glenn Newman Jr., and he was not a little person. He did grow up to be over 6 feet tall. But he actually had some mental disabilities. So he joined the circus. You know, his family are circus performers. Yeah. So he actually joined the circus as the human hammer, or sometimes called the human blockhead, which was a play on words because of his mental disability and because his performance was he would drive nails up his nose.
Oh, my God. Oh, gosh.
Can you even imagine? And during this time, Grady Jr. filed for divorce.
Okay.
And he won custody of the girls. I was thinking, how in the world, with that abusive nature, could he get custody?
But maybe money?
Apparently, Mary failed to show up at court.
Huh?
I don't understand that.
Okay.
I would never leave my kids in that position.
No.
But again, I don't know her whole story, so I can't really judge her. But that did make me pause and think, what in the world? So Grady remarried. And his next wife's name was Barbara Browning, and together they had a child, Grady Stiles III.
Okay.
He also was born with Ectrodactyly. By this time, Grady was like really drunk most of the time and just really so out of control that sometimes even during a performance, he would be drunk on stage and would lunge towards circus visitors like trying to scare them.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And I bet it worked.
I imagine that really was terrifying.
Yeah.
In 1978, when his daughter Donna was just 17, she fell in love with 18-year-old Jack Lane. And for some reason, whatever reason it was, Grady did not approve. He would openly make fun of Jack, belittle him. He called him a freak, which was weird. Then one day, Jack proposed to Donna, and she accepted. She knew her dad was not really going to approve.
Yeah.
So at first, when she told her dad and he was furious, she had to run away and stay with Jack's sister to get away from her dad's outburst. She tried to call home, and Grady told her if she did not get home in 5 minutes, he was going to beat the out of her, and then he would kill Jack.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. But Donna was still determined to marry Jack, and so she decided to make up this lie and say that she was pregnant. So she's thinking, well, if I'm pregnant, he'll let me marry him.
Yeah.
And so she needed his consent because she was not 18 yet.
Okay.
Yeah. And then she told her dad, if you don't consent, I'm just going to move in with him. Mm-hmm. Her father was not shy about his threats to Jack. He took Donna along with him one time to a pawn shop where he bought a .32 caliber revolver and jokingly told her, I'm going to use this on Jack.
Wow.
So he just did not want her to marry him. But once she said, I'm going to move in with him if you don't.
Yeah.
Whatever ploy worked, whether it was the fake pregnancy or the moving in together, suddenly Grady had a change of heart and did give his permission for them to marry.
Okay, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Did the girls still have a relationship with their mother?
They did.
Okay.
Grady said he preferred for them to marry instead of living together in sin.
Okay.
I know. It's kind of weird to think you've got all this abuse going on.
Yeah.
But
you don't want to.
Which again, I mean, we don't agree with that, but like, it seems a little hypocritical.
Isn't that though the way we humans are? It's like we can't see our own sin, but we can see everybody else's really clearly.
Yes, exactly. That's true. So a date was set for the wedding. And on the night before the wedding, Grady summoned Jack in for a private talk. Jack went to Grady's home for the talk, probably, expecting his future father-in-law to give him the standard, you better take care of my daughter speech, probably with a few more threats thrown in, like if you hurt her, I'll kill you. Mm-hmm. You know how those go. But they exchanged a few verbal jabs, and then suddenly Grady pulled a shotgun out from under a cushion and shot Jack twice.
Oh, my gosh.
Once in the chest and once in the back as Jack tried to turn and run.
Oh, my gosh.
Later, Donna said that as Jack was dying in her arms, her father smiled at her and said, I told you I'd kill him.
Oh, my goodness.
It's horrible.
That is, oh, my gosh, that's terrible.
Yeah, and Donna never did speak to her father again after that night, according to the sources that I read. So, Grady was charged with the murder and went to trial. Yeah. He actually admitted to killing the boy. Even when the law had arrived, Grady said, "Take me, I'm ready," and showed absolutely no remorse. You assume it's pretty much an open and shut case, right?
Yeah.
But you have to remember, Grady grew up in show business. He knew how to perform. And during the trial, he portrayed himself as a concerned father trying to protect his family. He also made a big deal of being a society outcast who had suffered for years from cruel treatment. And I have no doubt that's probably true.
Right.
But now he's using it to his advantage.
Yeah.
Fellow carnies even testified of his good character at the trial. Even the bearded lady was called to the stand as a witness. Once again, exploiting his own disability.
Yeah.
Grady was able to reframe reality and make himself appear weak, not able to do much. I mean, it was a fine performance by all accounts. However, in 1979, he was found guilty of third-degree murder.
Okay.
He then smugly argued that he couldn't possibly go to prison because there was no prison that could accommodate his disability. And in addition to that, years of heavy drinking and smoking had left Grady suffering from emphysema and cirrhosis of the liver. He had worked himself up to a bottle of whiskey and 3 packs of Pall Malls a day.
Wow.
Unfortunately, he was right. No prison was equipped to deal with his disabilities. And so the judge granted leniency, and Grady was given only a 15-year suspended sentence and basically allowed to go home.
That is bizarre.
Yeah.
Basically he just got off scot-free.
Yeah, and he was pretty smug about it. I mean, it's like he knew going in, they're not going to do anything about this because, of what I'm dealing with, my disability or whatever. Then this kind of emboldened him to continue his violent antics.
Sure.
He would brag that he had gotten away with murder. He would say, "I got away with it before and I'll do it again." So he is now a loose cannon.
Yeah.
Worse than ever. Well, his daughter Kathy even related the story of when she was 7 months pregnant. Now, she does have ectrodactyly. She's wheelchair bound as well. And when she was 7 months pregnant, she said she was the focus of his rage for a while. And during a fit of temper, he just clubbed her out of her wheelchair. And the next morning, she had to get an emergency C-section. And she delivered her daughter prematurely.
Oh.
Yeah. And her daughter Misty was born without legs. And she also had ectrodactyly in her hands. So now she was the 6th generation of the family to whom the condition had been passed down.
Wow.
Time went on, and both Grady's and Mary's second marriages both ended in divorce.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And for whatever reason, Mary Teresa decides to go back with Grady.
His first wife?
Yes. And now this is what I just will never understand after you've suffered years of abuse and you're out.
Yeah.
You're out, you're safe, you've got away.
Yeah.
And you go back. After years of abuse, she says she still loved him and he had said he had changed.
We'll be back after a quick break.
At the beginning of this year, one of my New Year's resolutions was to get my home decluttered and organized, especially my kitchen. Just going in there felt daunting. Even family meals were no longer enjoyable. I knew that I needed help because the thought of tackling it on my own was overwhelming. And then Melody told me about Shannon over at Functional Spaces. And let me tell you that meeting her transformed my kitchen from a cluttered mess to a cozy functional space that I once again can take pleasure in.
Everyone has that one chaotic area in their home that requires excessive time and energy to manage. Many of us can identify more than one. For Darlene, that was just inside her kitchen door.
Yes, everybody would come in and throw mail, keys, and coats all over the counters and chairs. I told Shannon this was such a source of stress for me. Why couldn't everybody just put their stuff away? And she explained that we could easily turn that area into a place of peace and productivity, a true functional space. We added a coat rack with key hooks and a small mail bin, and that has been a game changer. That's just one example of the difference she made.
Functional Spaces is based in the Triangle and serves Central North Carolina. If you're ready to experience that same transformation, go to functionalspacesnc.com and fill out the contact form. You will receive a link to schedule your discovery call to chat about your project area. Again, that's functionalspacesnc.com. Tell her your friends at Hard Times and True Crime sent you.
Oh my God. Yeah, it sounds like it.
Why would you even believe that? I don't get it. But I do think, because again, she had left home herself to get away from abuse. Sometimes you're in that cycle, you just can't get out.
Yeah.
You just can't get out.
It's what's normal, I think, to some people.
Yeah. Which is very, very tragic.
It is.
They remarried each other in 1989. And they took up where they left off with their family show. Of course, we both know that Grady had not changed.
Right.
And it wasn't long before he began drinking again. I think she said it was 2 weeks. And of course, that physical abuse started right back up.
And look what he had done to her girls.
Yes.
Yeah.
And one daughter's not even speaking to him.
Right.
I would be surprised that the one that who had the premature daughter would even still speak to him.
Sure.
His abuse now is just, it's not in check. There's no accountability for him. And he would beat them all, whoever was in the house. Even Mary's son by her second husband, which is, I guess, now his stepson.
Oh, I bet.
Yep. And at times he would hold a knife to Mary's throat, threatening to kill her. And they knew those threats were not empty. I mean, he had killed and gotten away with it before. And so it was just a matter of time. Something bad was bound to happen. They knew Grady was bound to take it too far one day and somebody's going to end up dead. Somebody already had.
Sure.
It was a ticking time bomb. In 1992, the family stopped touring and they went to their winter quarters back in Gibsonton, Florida, that I had told you about, which was again known as Showtown, is what they kind of like nicknamed it. It was like a moniker. Lobster Boy would go to the Showtown bar and park his wheelchair inside, drinking double shots of Seagram's 7 Crown for hours into the night, and then come home and be abusive before he passed out. And now it's not clear whose idea it was, but whether it was Mary Teresa or her son Glenn, but one of them decided enough was enough. Glenn approached their 17-year-old neighbor, Chris Wyant, and he offered him $1,500 to kill Grady. And Chris also was one of the carnival employees. So Chris bought a gun through a friend. He had some friends like in gangs and whatnot. And in November 1992, he went to Grady's home. Mary Teresa had told Grady she was going to run out for an errand.
Yeah.
She purposefully left the home. Chris came into the house, and while Grady was watching TV, he walked up behind him and fired 3 shots into the back of his head at point-blank range.
Wow.
Grady, at age 55, was gone, and the years of abuse were at an end. At the funeral, a spray of flowers with a sash reading, "From your loving wife," was draped over his casket. But Lobster Boy was so detested that only 10 people attended his funeral.
Wow.
And the funeral home could not even find anybody who would be willing to be pallbearers.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. No, I mean, he was a detestable guy. I mean, everybody knew. He was buried in Tampa, Florida, but his headstone has no epitaph. Now that he is gone, it doesn't take long. Glenn starts getting questioned and he breaks down immediately.
Right.
And admits to it. It's time for Mary Teresa to go on trial. She's arrested for this conspiracy. The prosecutors accused her of killing, not in self-defense or that burning bed defense that we've talked about before, but they said that she killed for convenience. Even Grady's son, from his second marriage, Grady Stiles III, so Mary was only his stepmother. Even he testified during that trial that he had, just days before that murder, had to break through a locked door to rescue Mary from Grady during a vicious drunken attack.
Wow.
Yeah. Kathy, too, testified of the abuse suffered by her mother at the hands of Grady Stiles Jr. She described his character as cruel, cold, and sadistic. Mary had this to say about her husband. "My husband was going to kill my family. I believe that from the bottom of my heart. But the unsympathetic jury found her guilty of manslaughter and conspiracy to commit homicide."
Wow.
She went to prison for 12 years.
She went to prison, but he did not.
Yes.
Okay, that's
I know.
interesting.
Isn't that
Wow.
crazy? After her release, she returned to Gibsonton to live. All right, side note. Her prison records state that she had a tattoo on her butt that read Grady Stiles Jr.
Oh my gosh.
And remember, we said he learned how to write his name.
True.
And actually, that little tidbit was in an article that I read about he learned to write his name. So I don't want to copy that, but
That's hilarious.
I did think it was funny. Chris Wyant, the one who actually pulled the trigger, he was convicted of second-degree murder and was given 27 years in prison. And he was released in 2009.
That's kind of sad.
It is, because he got pulled into that. And
Yeah.
But he did kill somebody, and he wasn't the one being abused. He did it for money, so I get it. But he was a kid.
Especially if it's their neighbors and he knows the situation. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
What about her son?
Okay, and with that, Mary's son Glenn, so he was actually charged with being the mastermind behind the plot. And remember, he was the one who had the mental disabilities.
Yeah.
But for some reason, they thought he was the mastermind, which I feel like it was probably Mary.
Yeah.
But they charged him with that. And so he was charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy to murder.
Bless his heart.
I know, and sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 25 years. But sadly, he died behind bars in 2014.
Oh, I hate that.
I know. I do too. The sad story of evil, meanness, family dysfunction, it lives on today. Lobster Boy has inspired comic book villains, album covers, and sometimes the occasional TV character.
Yeah, he was just in American Horror Story. I don't watch that, but I have seen clips of his character on TikTok.
Okay, yeah. So that was one of the things. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen that, though. I'm going to go look. Grady Jr.'s daughter, Kathy, she's married. And remember, she has it, too.
Right.
She appeared in Tim Burton's film, Big Fish, and the TV series Carnival.
Okay.
Kathy's daughter, Misty, and Grady III continue to perform on the carnival scene as the Lobster family for some years. Grady and Kathy also made some appearances on AMC's Freak Show in 2014.
Mm-hmm. I've seen that. I did see that. The Freak Show. I saw... Oh, it's his son.
It's his son. And I think his son is now I think he's got a girlfriend with the bearded lady too.
Okay, yeah. I have seen, I don't know if it was articles or a show, but I've seen something about him and his girlfriend.
Yeah. And then there's his granddaughter, Misty.
Okay.
But Grady III is his son, yeah. So it's weird, tragic in so many ways. The way he dealt with his sorrow, the abuse, the murders, the fact that Mary and Glenn and Chris had to go to prison, but Grady didn't.
Yes.
I mean, just all of it. I don't believe in karma, but the Bible does say you reap what you sow.
It does.
And I think he sowed abuse and hate and murder and ended up dying that way.
Yeah.
And so it's a pretty tragic story. But so what do you think? Do you think they should have been found guilty?
No, I don't think so. And normally I would say, yeah, like with Gypsy Rose, I have mixed feelings about her. But in this case, I don't know. I feel bad for them.
Yeah, especially since he did get away with it. Like, I don't feel like they should have had to pay that price.
And she probably felt like she couldn't leave because where is she going to go besides that small community? Mm-hmm. And if she went anywhere else, I mean, he's obviously able to find her.
Yeah. And I do think he would have eventually killed them.
Yeah, I do.
I do think it was him or them.
Right.
I really believe that. And I do think her defense of abused spouse syndrome, I think that was a correct defense.
Yeah.
I really do. Even though the prosecutor said it was convenience, I just feel like they got that whole case wrong in that respect.
Yeah. It's not just convenience not to want to be beat to the point of death.
Right.
You know, on a regular basis. So that's really sad.
Yeah. And he had proven that he was willing to kill.
Sure.
So I just don't think there was any doubt that he would have. So that's the story of Lobster Boy.
Wow. Those sure were some hard times.
Yes, they were.
By the early 1900s, the traditional freak show was dead and gone. And I don't know for sure, but I would speculate it was the financial devastation of 2 world wars and a Great Depression that sealed their fate. Folks were too broke to afford groceries. They certainly weren't going to pay good money to see a lady with a beard. But all that changed in 1962 when a man by the name of Sam Walton revolutionized the experience by combining the necessity of grocery shopping with the pleasure of seeing weird, strange, and freaky people when he opened the first Walmart. So the next time you're heading out for groceries, boots, and a pool, you make sure you tell everybody you know, and a few people you don't, to check out Hard Times and True Crimes. Till next time, goodbye.